and I have to switch real quick to for the announcement about the public meeting. Okay, I call this hybrid meeting to order with any remote participation operating under the Albemarle County Continuity of Government Ordinance. Okay, now I'm going to go back to make sure I get your presentation. Okay, so today we do have several things on the agenda. The most important is meeting our new staff, or now you feel like you've been here a while. I guess you don't feel new anymore. But so if you don't mind, introduce yourselves, and I would love to hear a little bit about your experience and why you're at JMRL and how you're doing.
So I have there's a PowerPoint that's going to go through most of what the agenda is, but we'll just use this as a loose guideline.
Okay.
But it does start with an intro.
Okay, so this can, I see now. I'm going down. Oh, okay.
So,
wow.
Kayla Payne, exclamation point.
Oh.
Thanks. I'm Kayla Payne. I started here September 20th. I came here from the Stanton Public Library. I still live in Stanton, lived in the Shenandoah Valley since 2012. Went to JMU, and my position in Stanton, I started in circulation, went to reference, brief stint in youth services, and now and then became a technology services librarian. And coming here, I was very interested in the larger system and kind of the atmosphere here. So I'm really glad to be here. And just sort of, I do supervise the digital services, IT, collection management, and technical services. And our 2.5 team IT department, 2 people left at the beginning of November. So we're a little short staffed on the IT front right now. We are doing those. We've been doing interviews for IT supervisor, and be interviewing for the support specialist soon.
Right.
So what we did a little maneuvering internally is a little inside baseball, but thanks to Stella's help and her team, there was the only other remaining half-time employee in IT was shared with Stella's position, and we adjusted the lab hours in order to allow that person to be a full 40-hour employee right now. So right now there's one person handling the on-the-ground IT work under Kayla for all of JMRL. So just to give a little context about where we are.
Oh my goodness, you've been busy.
Yes.
Oh, right.
Okay, so any questions for Kayla? Sarah?
Aside from that, aside from not having any help.
I'm Sarah Elizabeth. I've been in Charlottesville for 20 years now. I came from Phoenix. I started June 1st, so I just passed my 6-month anniversary. I am a UVA grad in anthropology and media studies, and then I got my MS in user experience design from Kent State. I have worked in tech since the 90s, off and on. I've also worked in nonprofits off and on. And I really enjoy the public sector sort of work. The last nonprofit thing I did was I worked for the Master Gardeners, the Virginia Cooperative Extension.
Oh.
Yes, I was their coordinator and did their website
Oh, cool.
and all their technical outreach stuff. And I've also worked for UVA School of Medicine in user experience design. And I worked at Category 4, which is a web development company here in town. And so I was really excited to kind of get to this public sector team of one and improve the JMRL technical services or digital services. When I started, one of the first things I did, just learning from experience, is I started using the help desk ticketing system that the IT group uses. And so I started to track what this position does. And those are the stats that you can see there. In the first 5 months, I did 500 and some tickets of content updating or adjusting. And it just gives a picture of some of just the ongoing maintenance that we do. I've also spent lots of time learning about where the last digital services coordinator left off in the web development area. And she's been very responsive, very helpful in giving me some info, answering questions as I've gone along. So.
I like that spam and solicitation as a category.
Yeah.
That seems pretty low.
I mean,
16.
I actually use that because I send them a nice thank you for your interest, and please, we will take your solicitation under advisement. Please do not contact us again. Because as Kayla noticed in the first week, if you don't answer, they'll send you again.
Is this the thing? Have you had time to look at the email I sent you earlier about the
Yes,
article I
so
will post?
It only took me getting that once for me to say, I need to give a good response.
Yeah, I get those too. I should get your response. So I just delete them.
These stats have been very useful. We didn't really have a good picture of the tracking, and also Sarah's attempts to standardize the staff requests for work that needs to happen on JMRL.org and our catalog, both versions of our catalog, I think has been kept you sane for one,
Yes.
but also has
Yes.
has been instrumental in showing the rest of staff like where the value is of, where all this work is, and giving them tools so that they know where to go at any given time to make sure that their program is posted or their whatever event is highlighted, or that they're, in COVID response, we've had so many bouncing back and forth changes too that it's been able to track that very well too. So.
And Sarah did an excellent training at In-Service Day explaining how the calendar, the Trumba software makes our calendar, because other staff don't understand how it works. And it really helped, I think.
I did a 5-minute lightning talk to just give them an idea of this third-party software that we use to populate our calendar. And then based on feedback and based on just some questions I've gotten throughout the months, I made tutorial videos. So little 5-minute videos showing this is where I enter this, this is where I enter this, and this is where I enter this. And I gave them an outline of just the info I need. I want to cut down on a lot of back and forth questions.
Mhm.
And then I also gave them screenshots. This is what it looks like for the patron. This is what it looks like for us, so that they know everyone's perspective and whatnot. And I walked someone through it this morning just to answer her questions, and the programming committee is using those tools to kind of help with their process to speed everything up. So
That's great.
So that is the current setup basically of JMRL's IT and digital services department. We're very lucky to have both Kayla and Sarah on board. We're thrilled to have them. The work has been outstanding to this point, and we expect great things in the future. But there has been a little bit of a reset. We were already behind on major projects, and we had a very ambitious technology plan that we'll talk about. That COVID has certainly caused some pause in, and certainly website development we'll talk about. So we just wanted to set the scenario too for where we are, which is rosy looking in the next 2 months, 3 months, but still not without challenges. Wendy, do you want to move on and start talking about the website?
Yes, I'd just like to say one, it's very impressive that you all have such variety of experience. In all the library positions, you have much more input and knowledge, and yeah, you right in our line of nonprofit.
yeah.
For sure, and all patron oriented. That's great. Okay, so our next is order is and I had a whole list of things to talk about, and then the website Mike had been following more, I guess probably more closely than anyone, and realized that that's in itself a huge agenda item, and will take us. So if today we could get kind of an update, see where we're going, what ideas are there, and how you all see the project going forward, and what you need to do. And if we can help, we're only here to assess what you produce. So not to manage, but to give you whatever help and that you need in the path, and approving kind of feedback on design, and since that's been an issue as we go through, always with, the public being the consumer or our patrons in any event. So, if we, this is where we stand, David.
Well, I think there's a few slides here that Sarah is gonna go through to kind of give a
Okay,
background of.
let me,
where she can
let
go.
me, let me enlarge them.
Sure,
on,
take your time.
Hold on one second.
Mike, we did share that just as when we came in, we shared this presentation so that she can see locally, so I'm happy to share with you. some of the-
This works well for me.
Yeah, so we'll get a good sense. I hope you all have, because you've been working on, and then we'll get a sense of your interpretation.
Sure.
Sure, that'd be great.
Sarah, go for it.
So when I started, part of in the interview process, it was what the new site, which is called beta.jmrl.org. I was told it was 95% done and just about ready for launch. Their usability testing was the next step and whatnot. In my going back through notes that Catherine, my predecessor, left, and just doing analysis on the website, I've documented a lot of the work that she did. I agree that the content is 95% done. The sticking points that she was running into that were causing delay for her were more about infrastructure in terms of the server and the software. Those are about where the sticking points I'm at now. They're not hard, fast delays. It's just that's the next step. I am really happy with how the content is right now compared to what she moved over, how it's organized. The information architecture's pretty solid. She did get feedback from the public and she did incorporate those changes. It was all passive feedback in terms of surveys and whatnot, but she did get feedback from staff and from patrons. So with that in mind, I want to get the server infrastructure and development architecture in place so that it's easy to update. We have some software updates. Drupal is the content management system. It's due for an update. Viewfind, which runs Find It, the new catalog interface, is due for an update. And I just need to set up a good solid process to make those happen without minimal downtime and disruption, and make it easy for future updates and changes. So that's my analysis, is that I'm really happy with the site. I want to get the backbones solid so I feel comfortable and confident that I won't take the site down and that it will be easy to update in the future.
Because the technical part I'm not informed on. So is it just a matter of updating, which is a recurring process for that particular software, or is there something else we need to buy, install, or upgrade on the server end?
So one of the things we've noted is that we don't really have a backup system in place for regular backups of the server and the site. That is something that needs to be purchased and put into place, or decided on and put into place. Kayla mentioned somewhere we have a note that that was already a line item in the budget, in the equipment budget. So that's just something that just needs to be put into place. So much of what Catherine was accomplishing was she was getting a lot of this front end stuff done and taking care of feedback. Where she was running into barriers was this infrastructure. So catching up with how the content, the new site, how the content changes over time. That's part of tracking changes, is just to understand what kind of changes come in on a regular basis and how it's formed and stuff. I'm confident that all of that is in place, and that really we just need to, the short answer to your question is we do have a line item to put some of this stuff into place, and it just needs to be
done.
done. Yeah.
David.
Yeah. And then I'm very confident that the site is close to ready for launch.
Warren, are we ready for the next?
And to come up with all this, I went through notes, the web committee notes, all the notes that Catherine had about what she was doing and presentations and meetings and all sorts of stuff. And I came up with a timeline of what's been done since she started and was tasked on this project. And so this just gives a nice rundown of the milestones throughout the project. And if you scroll down, David,
You want to go through them?
if you want me to detail each one, then sure.
Actually, I don't mind. I'll go through them. Yeah, and you break in. So 2018, digital service coordinator, new position. So that's when Catherine started. Revamped the online experience. The website and the catalog was the goal there. The website committee met shortly thereafter, started work on this. November 2018, solutions evaluated. The committee selected Drupal as the content management system for the website, ViewFind for the catalog, the new catalog. January 2019, the committee demo of a Drupal site based on prelim analysis. So as far as I understand that, Catherine stood up an example of what that would
Yes,
look like.
for the web committee, she gave them a very rough example of what she just threw a couple pages together and showed them this is what it's looking like, so they can discuss it.
Followed by redesign presentation, so solutions, plans, and a demo in February of 2019, so coming up on 2 years ago. March of 2019, the web committee met to review the ViewFind Drupal development status. And in June of 2019, a ViewFind issues list was made for the launch of ViewFind. And this is something that the technology committee here, I think, is aware of, but the general public is not really aware of the fact that really JMRL has two different web presences. There's our website, jmrl.org, and then there's our online catalog, which is where most people are, a lot of people are looking when they come to our website is to find books and materials. That's actually a separate thing that's hosted by our integrated library system. And ViewFind is the new interface for that, which has been live for, since we get to it here, but it's a more robust version of that. So a lot of work was happening there to get ViewFind done. Fall of 2019, Braid was hired. That's a local tech company as consultants for the Drupal server and GitHub configuration. Can you speak maybe to what the GitHub?
That is the development architecture that I'm talking about. They help set up the process of making changes here and putting them onto the server so that it's just a smoother process of, so it's not a live change. So it can be tested and worked on in a development environment and then released to the production environment. So they helped with that architecture. They helped establish that. Obviously, since where we are now, some of that was not clear. Some of that isn't quite working as expected. And I'm trying to fill in the blanks as to how it's supposed to work and make it as smooth as possible. So this was the first step.
Okay. So is that something you need to go back to them for?
I've been in talks with them. Yes.
January 2020, I like the rocket ship. ViewFind beta test results, plans for the Drupal site, usability testing. Aim is launch in April of 2020. March 2020, sad face, COVID-19, changes were implemented. So a lot of work had to happen. A lot of things got put on hold then. And Catherine focused on getting the online card registration up and several other kind of short-term responses is a good word. Summer of 2020, the beta website was presented to the library board and beta went live for public feedback. Find It, which is ViewFind, that's our internal, that's what we call that catalog now, went from beta to live. So it has been the primary source of catalog searching since that time, although we're still offering both options that the classic catalog is still hosted by our ILS and is available out there. And if people are more comfortable with that, they can use them. Fall of 2020, Drupal Beta in-service day demo for all staff. Patron feedback was collected. New pages were added to the legacy site. There was a version upgrade for Viewfind and Drupal and server instability.
That's what Catherine, in fall 2020, that's where she, basically, she updated a couple of things and then it crashed and she struggled with it. Now, she resolved a lot of it, but,
Just beyond the,
you know, it just points to, we want to make sure that we guard against any sort of problems in the future. And this is where she didn't quite have enough information from what Braid did to help make sure that it doesn't happen again.
So went back to Braid the following year in February, consultant for service support. But then shortly thereafter, Catherine left for greener pastures, and we had an empty position there. I want to thank Stella for stepping in at that time and managing the legacy site.
The old stuff I can do.
And that architecture there is basically just updating live HTML on our server. So Stella had access to the server. She updated Trimba for staff. She made any changes, and there were a lot of changes because, as I said, COVID is, it has meant a lot of information needing to be out there for the public. June 2021, Sarah starts as the digital services coordinator. We are open for tier 2 services, so pretty close, getting close to back to normal library services. But then our collections and technology manager left at that point, so we were missing a leadership role there at that point. So this is all post Sarah at this point. Summer 2021, evaluation and implementation of a new process for submitting website calendar content, deciphering the dev structure. So a lot of that is what Sarah just talked about, like getting staff kind of
sharing with the
training them
staff.
up on how to input content changes and starting to work on the development structure we have. All fall documentation, which we are in much better shape now than we have ever been before, I think, in terms of documenting what we've got. Of the Drupal content and structure, refining all the digital services coordinator documentation, updating Drupal content. Here we are. Meet with the board tech committee on beta status and finish last Drupal content items. So that's,
Yes.
I'm not gonna put words in your mouth, so jump in if I'm wrong, but I think that's just taking the rest of the content or new content since there's been an update and moving it over to the Drupal server.
One thing I have been doing in the past couple months, and that was the fall 2020, is I'm now, as I make a content change in the legacy site, I'm also adding that content to the Drupal site. So I'm actually maintaining 2 different sites right now. And I did some catch up. Catherine had a note, catch up with board meeting minutes and stuff like that, links and whatnot. Also, there were 1 or 2 pages that still had not been built, and I'm still following up on just every nook and cranny in our current site, making sure that that content is covered. When Josh would say 90 to 95% ready, yeah, there's still about 5% of content that I need to, and I'm confident I can finish it the next couple of weeks. That's my focus.
So now we're talking about, so any questions about where we are, right? That's where we are right now, basically. And then now we can start talking about timeline and a plan. But at this point, any questions from anyone?
Do you want to rely on Braid to do the new server setup?
Well, the next step is January is to consult with someone with support to plan the software updates, because the software update for Drupal is going from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, which has some changes in functions. It has some programming changes, which I just want to make sure I have a consultant to help me if I run into trouble, because this is running against some of my skill set. So the limit of my skill set. So I have been in touch with Braid to kind of catch up on where we were, if they had any documentation, that sort of thing. They've given me some answers, some feedback. I've also talked to Catherine a little bit about her experience. We have not settled on someone as a consultant. I also asked Braid if they have anyone to recommend if they do not have the time
Yeah.
bandwidth to do it. If they don't have any recommendations, I know a couple of Drupal developers that I could reach out to and at least maybe get their references. So yes, I'm planning on having some support system behind me as I do these updates and infrastructure. Who it is, we haven't figured.
Okay.
And
And ideal, I'm sorry,
I was just gonna say, time-wise, that was
January.
coming up, so.
Ideally, we would have somebody that would then be kind of on a retainer for this
Yeah.
type, because Drupal 9 means Drupal 10 and
Right,
Drupal
right.
11 and Drupal 12, and just an ongoing level of backend support if we need it.
So I kind of made this outline. By January, we'll have all of this decided and in place. And then the next step is from February to April to do it
Doing
all.
it.
So the idea is, let me finish the content, let me get some of that busy work out of the way this month. January, let me really focus on establishing this infrastructure support system, and then let's put it all into place. I mean, this is a loose plan. I'm kind of doing all this stuff. Obviously, I've been talking to Braid and I'm preparing for all this. But those are my milestone goals.
And, David, who does the city use for their,
The
do
city
they
uses
have a
a product,
consultant? No, I mean, as a
a host.
agency, a
They
consultant.
largely host their own, they've got a server facility, which we have access to. And many years ago, we moved from having our own web server hosted there to a web-based server. Their website product is CivicWorks. They just made a change during the pandemic. And that's a pretty common one. It might be the same one that Louisa County uses. So it's like, they sell
They
a
sell
content management
the whole
system
thing.
for local governments. And then the city also uses AWS and web services. So we didn't really get into it, but there is the potential that we might need to move our host server depending on what we find out in the next few weeks about the architecture. Our former consultants seemed to think that there were some limitations to it's currently hosted in the web by a provider, and they felt that there were some limitations there
That,
on that server with that service. So we might be in the market for moving that, and that has the potential to be just my own experience with moving servers. It can take longer than we would expect. So if we're gonna run into a problem this spring, that might be it. It depends, we might not have.
Yeah, and this is where I want to find a second opinion,
yeah,
because I'm finding some conflicting information, and this is over the past 2 years. So I want to say, here we are now, look at this with me, make sure I understand it, make sure it is robust, and move forward. And then, I mean, I have all this stuff in a development environment on my own computer, so I can break it all I want on my own as I work towards getting the live server.
And as I said, as we were talking earlier this week, I told Sarah that now's the time to break it. If we're gonna break it, let's break it right now.
Right.
Before it's a big announcement. This is wrong.
Oh, yeah, we're not going live till I feel
No. So it's
solid.
unbreakable.
Yes.
So the plan is to finish the kind of, so as Sarah mentioned, like getting the content up and cleaning up, making everything look the way we want it to look. I think that is something that we can do in the weeks, months to come, but then making sure that the back end is secure we're planning for the next few months, basically. The plan and the hope is by the end of the year, the end of the fiscal year, I should say, so May, June, that's our goal. And well, it's been a moving goal, but the goal currently is to have this done this year, is to be able to soft launch. So when users come to the website, they'll have a choice of which, come use the new beta or use our classic website, do some user testing, gather feedback at that point, tweak as needed. July and August, create finding aids, onboarding materials. So Sarah was talking about potentially like short videos on like trying to do this, like here's how you do this on this website, things like that. And then when we're comfortable that we have incorporated the important user feedback that we need in order to make sure we're providing the best product that we can there. In August or the fall, change the domain names basically, so that when you go to jmrl.org, you're going to the beta website. So this is the roadmap. The major stumbling blocks, I think, are if we were to have to move a server, identifying backend consultants that we could rely on for an ongoing relationship, not just like a, hey, can we pay you an hour to come do
Yeah.
this or that? And then once those things are done, the usability testing and focusing in on making sure.
Well, this is just a general question, since you've been here and in the business for so long. Are there, is Charlottesville a large enough hub that there are these kind of consultants available?
Yes.
Okay.
Quite a bit of UVA actually does, a lot of their sites now are in Drupal. They did a mass migration to Drupal several years ago. And in fact, the web development company that I used to work for, who is similar to Braid, it's a small local business, been in town for many, many years. They also do Drupal development.
Okay, so they're out there.
So they're out there, yes, and there are one time, that's why I say I want a second opinion, because I know there are other ways to do this kind of stuff, and I've seen some of this done in UVA, so
But
yes.
We're also talking about stuff on a server,
Mhm.
so the consultant could be anywhere. They're
Right,
gonna
they don't have to
access
be
the
here,
server
but
also.
we don't
I
wanna-
do think there's
Yeah.
local resources, but it doesn't even, for what
Yeah.
we're talking about, as I understand, it wouldn't have to be.
I think it's nice to be able to
Yeah, I
go
agree.
and get somebody.
Yeah.
yeah,
But that's not that's not.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
not major,
actually,
but
I
that
haven't
way,
been concerned about that.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have a better sense, I think, when it's local of evaluating, because the
Yeah.
other people they're using are here.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Context.
I
Yeah.
think another concern that I have that we haven't really talked about though is just the general availability of these services
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Because like
Everybody needs.
like any
it,
service
yeah.
that you need right now, there's a lag, you know, regardless of what it is.
Especially
So-
with-
So a lot of places,
Yeah.
especially smaller outfits, are booked out. They've got.
Yeah, like.
Well, that's what I'm thinking of, so because that's next, I mean,
It's.
a month or two, we don't have, if we're sticking,
Yes.
be ready to move on in a couple months,
I
so,
think
yeah.
the trap that we don't want to fall into, which I've seen in the past, is to find somebody who's willing to help us because they believe it's, we believe in the mission of the library, we're willing to help you out with this, and we'll give you a discount even, which is great. But oftentimes you then end up being an afterthought to other projects that outfit might have. They
Right.
consider it more like a, more like
Yeah.
a charity
Yeah.
project or something like that, which is great, and we do take advantage of those types of things all the time. But I think for
Not
the
in this
scale of
case,
this
so.
and to keep it sustainable moving forward, we want to have a relationship where we're a paying customer and we have a good relationship as a vendor to a customer.
I'm hoping we don't need too much in terms of consulting. I want to fill in some blanks, and I want some documentation, because if you only update every 6 months, when you come back to it, you want to make sure you follow that process.
And we want to build something that's proof
Sustainable.
against, we all drove here together, and a bus that wipes us out today. Would be somebody else. could
Well,
come.
that was
Yeah.
my other, sorry, and that we were looking at, if all of this is in place, we're not doing this again when they lure
Absolutely.
you to greener pastures, yeah. Everything is
Absolutely.
gonna be in place, doesn't matter as long as the person knows what they're doing. But
Yes.
we've got the technology set up, the web with server set, all of that, yeah.
That is, Catherine did leave a pretty extensive and detailed list of stuff she had worked on
That
and
helps.
whatnot. And I've been augmenting that because I'm calling it the DSC manual, because yes, it's very important to have that. It's invaluable for the next person. And you don't want to lose that kind of legacy knowledge. You
Right.
just don't.
Right.
So yes, that's part of what I've been doing. Like, what have I been doing for 6 months? Cleaning up documentation is so important. That's the last thing any developer wants to do.
Well,
So-
glad you're doing it,
It's been invaluable,
yeah.
and it will be for years to come.
Mike, do you have
Yeah,
anything
so let's talk.
you wanna, questions?
I have things to say, yes, but I wanted to get through.
Oh,
I
I
think
thought
we're-
this was our calendar.
So we've got.
This is the projected timeline.
Right, that's the kind of timeline, and then Sarah,
And
anything
the
we want to
priorities.
Anything we didn't cover that's on here?
Yeah, this pretty much sums up everything that we just talked about from that timeline, in terms of milestones to reach. And the timeline outlines kind of timeframes, but these are the milestones. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting past some of this, plumbing sort of stuff with the server and the development process to get to the fun information design, user feedback, refining the experience for staff and for patients.
So are we talking about a hardware server or a virtual server? And is the delay the one for all computers that we can't get them to be delivered?
Right now beta is virtual, and Scooter is hardware, which which is the the current development Scooter development server. So we do have a line item to get hardware for a backup server. If that's going to be a virtual server, not a physical, I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
So
The web server, the live web server though, will be a virtual server.
Okay.
I don't think we have plans to go back to hosting a
Yeah,
live web server. We got out of that business a few years ago.
No, I know, but I still have mine.
well, I mean, the
You could
development
be-
one,
I know where
We
it
have the
is.
backup.
You can always get
We have
to
it
it.
Yeah.
back up.
the development one is still in your office.
Yeah, no, I know.
But how that moves forward, I'm not sure.
Okay,
So maybe I'll stop screen share and we can talk for a little bit before we, while we're still on this agenda item. Okay. Okay, Mike, I think,
Yeah, so I want to compliment the previous team and the current team for everything that's been the progress to date, because this is a huge project with a huge payoff. The catalog in particular, I think is much, much better. I personally find myself going there first now that I've gotten used to it. As far as where's there room for improvement between what I think I've heard today and some things that I think I see are possible. What is that? I'm talking, if we talk about the gap between legacy and where we are now, that's a big gap. I think in my mind, a few targeted things that I'll at least lay out with the landscape of the gap between where we are today and where we could, the very best results, or that's the gap I'm talking about now.
Okay.
And I think there's some things we could do a little bit better. I also want to acknowledge everything you said about the back end. That's just to roll up your sleeves, debug, error message, where did that come from?
Absolutely.
Fix that one, find the next one. I know what that all is and what that means. And I kind of got nothing to say about that other than yes, roll up your sleeves, do it, get the I do want to reinforce the idea that I think we should equip you with the external resources that you might need when you need them. So if funding we think is a bottleneck, we can massage the budget. There's a general fund that sometimes can come into play. There's friends of the library that we could put potentially a pitch to. I don't want that to be pre-filtered as a bottleneck. Oh, we just can't. So let's have that on your solution space. And it sounds like you already do, but I want to just express my support for using that approach when it makes sense and when it can get us the results better, faster,
Yes.
Not cheaper. Where I see, I think, and I feel kind of strongly about this, but I'm just trying to give feedback in a constructive spirit. I think where there's the most room for improvement is just on the home page, the design and layout and presentation of the home page. So everything I'm about to say focuses only on that.
Okay.
There's yeah, we can pull up if you want.
Absolutely.
There's secondary pages, and those are fine, and they're kind of do what they need to do. Yeah. So, and I think I haven't been in the web committee meetings, and I know I saw pictures where there's a bunch of stickies, and I know a lot of thought went into stuff. But I also heard in Josh and Catherine's demo, I was trying to map it into the timeline. It might have been in 2020 sometime. He said, well, put up the old one first also. One of the things Josh said was, okay, Catherine took the old one, the old page, and used that as sort of a starting point and tried to simplify and rejigger and make a better version of that. And the huge flaw of the legacy site, if you just kind of scroll down, this is the landing page, and you can tell what happened is
Yeah,
it's just
so
too much
busy.
stuff. We're
Yeah.
trying to use it functionally as we're going to tell you stuff and tell you new stuff. And by telling you more and more stuff, unfortunately, it gets in its own way and it fails because there's so much clutter that no single key points or functionality can come through. And if you go now to switch to beta, what I experienced from this is that we didn't rethink that approach from, it's not clear to me, I'm just trying to be moderate here. It's not clear to me that we rethought that fundamental approach from a greenfield standpoint. So sometimes it does make sense to iterate. This homepage approach would be a place where I think I would hope that we would start from what I call a greenfield. If we were building a really cool website from scratch or a really usable website from scratch, what would it look like? And I don't think this is where you would land. I think you would, if you were using modern design principles, I think it would be something that's much more visual, much cleaner with, hey, what's our 4 things that need to be communicated and make sure nothing else gets in their way. This is not a work session, but I'll just, one small example. The most important thing, Sarah, I know you know about the F pattern. On this page is the top left, and we're showing featured digital collections, Canopy, Peterson's, Universal. What the heck is that? I didn't come here to be shown something about Universal. I want to check out a book or whatever. It's just clutter to show a bunch of really obscure or opaque icons to someone in this, in the number one
When the
usability position.
top position,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think if we were to,
I might push back on that a
Yeah.
little bit, Mike.
Yeah.
Because one of the goals here certainly was to get access to the I mentioned that like the public
Yeah.
doesn't understand that we have 2 servers there. So
right,
so the top thing is find it, and it's like, hey, you can search for things right here, right?
right,
So I think right beneath that, and maybe this is not the best way to do it, but the reasoning behind it is like people coming to our website are looking, some of them are looking for our digital collections. They want to get to Overdrive, they want to get to Libby, we want to highlight our online collection.
So I think the way to do that, because it's not one size fits all. So you'd have a kind of a square with a visual that says catalog, go here. Right next to it, if we identify that digital collection is an important one, then you put a big square that says digital, and when you click through to that, then you can show them all the details.
So similar to this e-library down.
Yeah, in fact,
David, do me a favor and scroll up.
I think on the beta site, there is a secondary page that kind of does what I just described. That shows
There
you
is a
all
digital
the
library
details.
page.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with you, Mike, that there is a lot going on the beta homepage. There is. I do recognize from this page here that there are about 4 or 5 major sections that are on the beta page. You have an ad section, you have a catalog section, you have a calendar section, and then you just have our online regular content, commonly updated content. So that would be the podcast, the blog, and no longer the wiki, but I'm looking forward to having some other stuff there. So here we have our ad section. What do we want to promote? Here we have our catalog section. Yeah, that could probably be improved because it is kind of disjointed looking. Whereas those digital collections are our catalog. They're just a branch off the catalog. Then the recently added is more catalog stuff. Maybe that's not so important there. But that's where some live patron feedback comes into play because, you know, we're in the age of Amazon and we're in the age of Audible, and boy, a lot of people like that. I'm not a big user of those kind of things.
Right.
Then we have our calendar section, and then we have our episodic. So we have about 4 or 5 major things we've addressed. Graphically, maybe they don't quite do it the way that we want, and maybe what the patron is looking for is not exactly what we want to project. So we have to find a good in between about what we want to promote and what the patron's looking for. So I don't disagree with you at all, but I do find places where I would want to have more regular user feedback before we make decisions.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
So that,
So,
that would be another sort of,
And I think, to clarify what I said, like, I agree with you that this, I don't see this and immediately understand like what it is that it's
exactly,
offering.
Right.
I completely
So I
agree.
want to
but you
get
can't,
that.
and you can't right here give that detail, so you'd have to put it on the secondary page. Put it
You
smart.
know,
So-
the quick search with all those buttons, those don't speak to me a lot because
Yeah,
I
me
don't
neither.
use that a lot.
Yeah.
As a patron myself. But what I do know is that ad space, catalog, and calendar are like the 3
Yeah,
big
see
things
those
that
3.
people want to know.
The
Yeah.
updated content, we could talk about.
You know, but that stuff shows that it's regularly updated. That's a feed. We don't have to do anything. And it just shows how active we are in terms of generating outreach content.
Yeah, so a couple of responses.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree, there's
That is.
balance
Mhm.
and a trade-off that you're trying to negotiate. I also absolutely agree that this is just me talking, I'm one guy with opinions. I thought about it a lot and I've looked at some other things. So I do think we can approach the process of getting some user feedback in a different and more effective way. The first thing I would say is your best feedback is going to be coming from showing somebody 2 options, not, hey, and I've done this I've been a product manager before and they sent me out customers, well, what do you want? I don't know. They don't
yes.
know. But if you show them 2 things, they can say, well, I like this one better than this one. And if you probe them a little bit, you can try and get them to say why. But that's only possible if we have a mock-up of the alternative to show. And so I haven't seen that incorporated in our process in any real way. I've seen, hey, here's what we have and what's your thoughts about it. But that's different from AD. So, and I didn't see a lot of space for that in the timeline, but and it's an effort, but that's how you get to me when you say, well, it depends what users want. I agree 100%, but there's an effective way to learn that and I'm not sure we've put those techniques into play.
According to the web committee notes, like you said, they did do some initial content information architecture discussion. And there were mock-ups of this. Trust me, this was worse.
Yeah,
A lot of that feedback came from within the web committee. And Stella, you were on that committee, so you were there for a lot of that.
Mhm.
Some of the biggest voices that distill down patron feedback are the staff. And so from what I understand from notes, the staff had feedback about here are the main things that they look for. Here are the main things they ask us about. And here are the things that we want to highlight and distilling down from that. So this was a lot of back and forth in the web committee and the web discussion. I agree that A/B testing is absolutely depends on, some users are great at giving feedback. Some are, I don't know what I want until I see it.
Right.
I've done testing in different realms like that, just some task testing or design testing, question, answer, survey, and A/B testing. What I would like to do with this site as it is now, because I think it does speak to a lot of the strengths of what we're wanting to go to, is I would like to put this out there and then start doing some of that, especially when we can start doing some more one-on-one. start doing some of those focus groups, start doing some of, focus group of walking through this, going, what do you think is most important? What is noise to you? And readjusting maybe what order, what we are presenting and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
When you say put it out, do you mean in terms of the beta parallel site or a soft launch site?
I
Or
would-
at which stage are you?
I would love to get this launched, like soft launch. I would like to get this out there, and I mean, technically it's been soft launch, it's live.
Right.
But what I would like to do is I think this is at a strong enough point that if we say, okay, you can go to the classic site or you can go to the beta site.
Right.
And you kind of experienced this with Find It, that Find It had some refining that happened
Sure.
a little bit too. And what I like to do is get this out there sooner than, and then do user testing after or during.
And
I mean, that's kind of where, because of delays and because some feedback has been incorporated from staff, there has been some passive patron feedback. I have to wonder at some point, some of the things that, I'm a user too, and some things bother me too. If I get majority feedback that they don't care.
yeah, then why spend time?
Right. And we don't want to delay. and no
Yeah,
return from
so I mean,
every-
there are, and I'm happy to mock up. I've done plenty of mock-ups and even copy this homepage and make a demo of it, rearranged or redone or rethought. Again, design-wise, I don't think this is, it certainly has room for improvement. I think it's a pretty strong presentation compared to also, I've been looking at other system websites parallel to our system and
Yeah.
size and stuff, like
Well, can we-
Rapid is
Can we
one.
throw up my favorite one, which just represents a different approach?
Sure.
And I have a couple questions and then maybe one more suggestion you can talk. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Evanston Public Library. I don't know the exact URL. And I'm only just in the spirit of showing you what I'm
Sure,
talking
absolutely,
about.
absolutely.
This is, so it's super clean and you get about 5 things and it's super visual.
So
And so this is where I would see where it says download. I don't even know what downloads is. Let's click on it.
that's your digital
That's your
library.
digital library, right. So, and then that's where you can put all the details.
And what's the first thing you said is downloads? I'm not sure what that talks about.
Well, but that's,
So here, very similar, calendar is very important. One of the things that in user experience design, if you scroll the way up and it's kind of a false thing to say above the fold now, but people
Yeah.
still use it.
no, it's.
I mean, they have one image, very similar navigation, very broad and not very deep. The first thing is what do you want to do? So we're requiring them to take an action before we actually give them something.
It's just
It's two ways to approach.
two approaches. The strength of this is you're not overwhelming them with stuff that
Very true,
for many people is probably irrelevant. That's the.
very
So
true.
this is the type of thing I would say, we'll just mock it up in a complete opposite direction where we call this the minimalist version. And then do some, that would be where I would start to look at some of these.
Here's a takeaway that I have based on what you're saying. They're
Yeah.
looking at their events this week, their Trumba catalog, whatever tool.
You only-
Yeah, whatever tool they're using.
It's all there,
Yeah, but you can't get through.
and ours is
All there.
all there.
I'll
So
admit,
it's just what you're doing
Yeah.
is making it small, and I agree with you, I prefer the look of that little box there.
Well, but if you click on the header, hopefully what I would hope to do with that is,
You could do see all of
yeah,
it.
get you to, and this might not even be the most effective way, but it's a square that says events, and then it gets you to it. But you're right, it's a philosophical thing. Is it better to be
Engaged
exactly
to
what you
begin
want in detail one click away, or is it better to kind of try and show you stuff up front? So
Do you like
and
the color blocks? Is that what appeals to you or just
These
the?
here,
just
so
the fact that there's a little bit of visuals. I think just perceptually I think this just has a better branding, look and feel and functionality. And I do want to make a little pitch that I do believe that visual and branding are important also. I mean,
Mhm.
functionality we've been talking about, and that's important. But if we take the analogy of a branch library, you know, when our Crozet, well, Crozet is not a good example, but Northside had the same functionality across the street. You had books, you had shelves, you go in, you got a circulation desk, but when it's looks a lot better and is just visual appeal, it gets a lot more use and a lot more, I think, satisfaction. So when I talk about some things like visuals, that's part of that's a factor that I think is valuable as well.
One thing I do appreciate, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
One thing I do appreciate about JMRL, and I mentioned this in my interview, is that I find the JMR logo and the color scheme and how it's carried through everywhere. I was impressed. UVA has struggled with that incredibly over the
It's
years.
funny because they have orange and blues.
Well,
So-
trust me, as a web developer, to try and even get a color scheme, they actually went from ground up. They started with whatever everyone was doing, and their branding stuff, they've only been doing for about 10 years. They haven't even really established their branding.
Yeah.
So to that point, and I meant to mention this earlier, Mike, we were talking about the decision being made to try to make a beta look like the legacy site in some way. I think a large part of that is driven by making sure that it follows our design protocol, which we have been following. So that has to do with the colors and the fonts and things like that. So that's very important, to go to Sarah's point there, that we want to make sure that we keep that through line.
Well, consistent
because we don't-
style.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to lose that.
and it's interesting, I would like to see, as Mike said, how people react, because to me, I have a totally different, you know, approach or observance and how I read a page. And so that, I think that is extraordinarily important, because see, I would see this as a kind of, I don't have any design terms, but a somber presentation.
Which
yeah,
It's
the
the one
colors,
that Mike likes. It's very uniform. It is very clean. And so it speaks to that kind of tidiness, you know. And some people, but the two things that I don't want you to lose, if we do, you know, move in another kind of design, is the one thing I like about the previous site. Finally, with the calendar, the regional libraries are included, and that wasn't the case. But you had to go to the page to see everything about that, and now that's front and center, so you can see, you know, Louisa's name. You know, not much, but
They're on there, like Nelson Holiday.
right. So now
It's
we
just a lot. This is so much stuff. It's hard to.
but on the beta, you have the branch map on the bottom.
Yes.
And the
love
two
that.
links.
Yes.
I really like that because, well, and see, this is just personal preference. If I go someplace, I look at the library website first. I'm sure not many people do that, but if you're moving or if you're, you know, if you're new to a place, you look and you want to see, because where we are, most of my patrons, a lot of them are closer to Charlottesville. You know, but you want to see, you want to know immediately that they're all part of a regional and the availability of resources in that area.
So
You know,
I
I like that, just so
Good.
to keep
I love that.
those
the
two.
map I love.
Yeah, I do.
And you
too.
know, this is, Sarah, there's not that much change here from where Catherine left it. You know, you've been preoccupied
Oh,
with some of this.
I haven't changed this design at all. I was talking about Catherine's initial to the web committee, her initial mock-ups. And even if you look at the staging site where she was first developing on Scooter, there have been graphical improvements where she incorporated the Find It most recent stuff. Another thing that I also want to keep in mind, and I know you know this, Mike, but also to make sure the design speaks to mobile experience. So
That's hard.
that is another thing that
Yeah, where the
Yeah.
constraints are even greater.
Yeah.
Right, because if you're on a mobile device and the first thing you do is get an input to type something in versus, or that you need to scroll, I mean,
Yeah.
just how much interaction are you having versus, or how much interaction's requiring you to get information out of it. So all big considerations, and you know, I'm learning so much about not coming from libraries. I'm absorbing so much about who our most often visitors are in terms of parents for story time, or how do we advertise to people to get them to come see free and open to the public? I mean,
Sure.
who are the ads speaking to? Who's the calendar speaking to? Who's the recently added speaking to? So yeah, it's a work in
Yeah,
progress.
it
It's
is,
like-
and it's huge because the beauty of it is the offerings are so great, you can't condense them
Yeah,
to,
I can hear Marcy in the back of my head too, saying that you need to get to the people who aren't the users of the library. as well.
Right.
So
sure.
what do they want? They want to know, like, how do I call this library, or where is it, or
Or
things
what
like
is it?
that,
Yeah.
or what is the library, right? So
yeah,
I think some of those points that you made, like, I love, now that I'm looking at this Evanston one, like, I wonder if we would think about condensing our box a little bit, just so it's because the length of the page, I think, is one
Mhm.
thing that adds to a clutter on it. Of course, we don't have a footer yet, you know, so there's gonna be
Right.
some design elements there.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that I do want something featuring the digital collection prominent, because this is the only place that people are going for that, you know, although most of them are just totally the app or whatnot.
but making it
But
convenient
something
is,
that
would be so,
speaks to that better.
yeah.
Right, so I mean, I don't know that the recently added adds that much to this page because it's on the homepage of Find It.
To find it.
Yeah.
So maybe, and that's a lot of real estate and that's a lot of noise. So again, but then again, some people think that Amazon's is the best design ever. I mean, and you want to talk about noise. So I would love to propose and talk about and bounce ideas and mock-up stuff. However, I think this is such an improvement of our current, and doing those changes with feedback incorporated, I think I would rather just kind of make this a work in progress than, and get this out there.
So if you're talking, so again, when you say get this out there, are you talking about a parallel
Yes.
and not redirect to?
You
Does
know,
get this out there mean redirect, JMRL.org to the new version, or maintain, or have it as a parallel secondary?
What I'm hearing, Sarah, is you're talking about this stage here, the May June soft launch, like that period, and that might be longer. That might be too short a period.
Yeah, I have no objection, because in my mind, we're already there, actually.
Yeah.
As you've been saying.
Right, but it
exactly.
means then, making a thing about it, putting it on the legacy
Oh, I
site,
see.
like trying to get people to interact with it. 'Cause
feedback.
right now, we even took, the link's been gone for a while since we haven't had it.
Oh, I see. I mean,
Yeah.
it's true. So the trade-off you're playing, that would come to my mind is, if there's a chance you're gonna make, a kind of a fundamental change in approach, you don't want to do that after people have just gotten trained or educated to a certain usage pattern and then change that up on that. You kind of want to do a major approach change once. But I think we're really saying the same thing, is get this in
Yeah,
front of people and get some feedback.
I
So-
don't necessarily see any feedback points that you've had
Yeah.
that are that major of change.
Yeah.
And for the strengths that I see in the homepage now, I don't see us changing all that much, that it just doesn't become a little more refined.
Okay.
So again, having that parallel experience, because I'm still getting feedback emails from patrons who give me the one line, I hate Find It.
Yeah, right, and it's not easy.
And
Well-
I write back and say, I'm glad we have the classic catalog available for you. It will always be available and that sort of thing. I don't want to do that with the website as a whole, but I want to have that beta experience there and then have this soft launch period. So then I could start doing some tweaking of that homepage. I don't think it would be that shocking a change to.
Okay.
put
I
out
think
there.
one thing that Sarah has really hit home for me, and we definitely had some communication issues during COVID down this command chain here. But that when Josh and Catherine talked about 95% done, part of my conception of that was that the last 5% was a design type thing. And what Sarah has brought to my attention is that no, it was mostly this server related stuff that was the big, it wasn't a hesitation to launch something because they weren't happy with the products that we were gonna start with that process. It was that, oh, we're not sure that it's gonna work great at this point. That's our first, still,
Yeah,
years
and
later, that's the
acknowledge that
first
up
thing.
front, and that's,
Yeah.
that,
But it was good for me
Takes a
to
lot of
kind of
time.
understand that a little better.
Yeah.
You know, as we've now got these positions in place and we've got some communication going up and down, and everybody's around and can talk about it, so.
okay. I'll make one other sort of comment from a sort of practical suggestion side. I really like what I'm hearing about getting the user feedback because again, I'm just one guy with some hopefully thoughtful opinions, but just one guy. I always, or periodically, I point out that we have something like between 500,000 and 1 million user interactions per year. And so whenever somebody comes to the library, in my mind, there's a chance to give them a bookmark or a quarter page of or every time, hand out with whatever message we need that to get out, plus the website itself, of course. Perhaps think about recruiting instead of what we've done now is sort of a one-time, hit me up one time with what you got, and it's open for someone to kind of have a repeated, but maybe think about using our ability to reach people to recruit people who sort of opt in to a focus group
Absolutely.
and make
Absolutely.
that as many as like 200
Expand.
people.
That's what I want to do in the summertime, is once we have this soft launch and it's out there.
Yeah.
And actually, from what when I've recruited for user testing before, for focus group, and for just blind testing, so much opt-in has been from people who have used stuff and have opinions.
Right.
And really, or
Yeah,
have,
so you got to worry about the self-selection aspect
yes,
of it.
yes, but those who are excited to participate and whatnot. And so I want to, yes, I absolutely want to gather focus groups of our users. We do have mailing lists. We have a massive mailing list from our online card registration.
Yeah, or just start
And we
blowing up
can
people.
certainly tap that, but again, it's kind of like, here is beta, we want some feedback, we want to hear how you're using the site. The online card registration are going to be a self-selecting group again, because they're online primarily.
You know where there might be some good synergy here, is Beanstack too, to like gamify this. So I'll talk a bit on Monday, but
Now
more
let's talk about more things we're adding to the site.
gosh, no.
I have a whole other third party.
pretty
to-
huge
yeah.
new digital offering that's very popular in the library world called Beanstack. The Library of Virginia bought a subscription for the entire estate.
Okay.
So we decided as an organization to move forward with it and support it regardless of what the state does. And it's basically not a replacement, but a parallel system for summer reading challenges, the sheets that you used to get, things like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So it's like an app-based version of that. So it's like, okay, you read 5 books and did this, you get a badge and whatnot. But I think there's probably room to build a challenge based on the beta website where it's like, try to do this, try to do that. And we've
Yeah.
got a robust system coming in.
100 points if you break it.
Yeah.
100 points if you can't find.
Oh,
the director's
yeah,
name.
let's do that.
Let's go on the positive side, 100 points if you get your book in 2 seconds.
100 points if you can
Yeah.
report
How
the
many-
exact
how many
error
glasses
message.
of wine does
Yeah.
trace that.
That's, I don't know why that happened.
So just to just complete that thought, recruiting this group, I think I would encourage you to think about some more proactive methods than what we saw last go around, which is sort of frame on the
Yeah.
website. So it sounds like. you're
Oh, it
thinking
was
along those
incredibly
lines.
passive.
Yeah.
It was all passive, which
Yeah.
is at the time with COVID, completely understandable.
Yeah, that's where we were.
And
And
there was no service desk handout.
And
My side
Catherine
was a
did,
huge
she did
resource.
a lot of research and there was discussion and there was a lot of discussion about doing remote user testing, which I've done as well.
Yeah.
Recorded user testing
Yeah, I
and
understand.
task stuff. And that is something that also speaks to someone who is of a certain technical level
Yes.
and comfortability.
Yeah.
So one thing I mentioned to David is I look forward to us getting to a point, hopefully towards the spring, summer, that I can be here in the library and actively recruit patrons as they come in or as they're here, come talk to me. I will be at Northside
Yeah.
all week on the week of whatever. Please talk to the webmaster and discuss, give your feedback and show what you do or don't do
Yeah.
and like and don't like.
Yeah, so this recruit cohort that you're also thinking about, you could re-tap them for something like that. But I just would point out you could do it at several levels. So you might be opting in to get one email a week with one A/B mock-up, and you're just gonna, because it's something you've volunteered to be part of, you be a quick hitter once a week, up through, these sort of more involved.
And that will be
open-ended, more open-ended
interesting
feedback calls.
to see of those techniques of outreach, which are, because I think people are, everybody is like quick now. One time, don't bug me again. Even sending, and I'm only saying it's because I've been sending out, the group invitation stuff, and
Right.
and then you get the reminder, and then you're like, why did you send me a reminder? Well, because I need a reminder. I need like somebody to call me and say, go to the meeting now. But so it's important to have that broad range that you're talking about of, different techniques and getting.
In terms of the recruitment, it would be a matter of making clear up front what they're volunteering
exactly.
for. Here's the types of things we might reach back out, and of course you can unsubscribe at any time.
Right, but I think that's important.
But I love that you're thinking along these lines, for sure.
Yeah, so we have lots of tools for user testing that goes from that passive base level to a one-on-one focus groups and regular check-in for feedback throughout. That is when we kind of aim for, again, I'd like to get this kind of soft launched and start doing some of that because we've had such a delay and that
Sure.
I think what beta is now is such a strong product compared to what we have for the classic site. I'd like to start making that move sooner.
So I love this timeline, and we've been pushing on this project for a long time now, and it hasn't met any other timelines that we have described to it. So I also want to be clear with the tech committee about the potential roadblocks that are out there. So we're talking about the capacity of our IT team. So if we do need a physical server installed there, we need to get people in place under Kayla to manage and set that up. And then we're talking about the need for some outside help, which might take a while, and then potentially moving a virtual server. So this is an optimistic view of where we could be, although I hear, I think Sarah's ready to go. Let's get it out there.
Well, we keep talking about the fun stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
the fun stuff is exciting. It gets your juices flowing. For sure.
Yeah,
I'm excited about that, but we also need to make sure we've got all that stuff in place
And-
before.
This is a little digression, but where are we with the hiring on the?
We're
Technicians.
interviewing, Kayla and Stella have been interviewing for the IT supervisor. And we have talked to a handful of folks, and they were all very good candidates. So we've been very happy with the quality. I got a few candidates, but very qualified ones. So we're hoping to make an offer soon and start negotiations, but we are still seeing quite a delay from that point into onboarding and hiring. We've got some backup issues.
And all of that builds into the what can get done and, you know.
And also
But you're-
potentially we might have people
Oh,
coming
yeah.
from elsewhere, which.
Any
would take-
interview would be
Okay, well, at this point, we're gonna move forward on the assumption that this timeframe will be workable, get you the needed backup on the server and consultants and try to put something in place so we can do at the same time, you're juggling all these things, researching and setting up for recruitment in the further down the line for focus groups
Mhm.
and setups and take into consideration even an additional design. But I'm hearing that the emphasis is going to be let's get the beta up soft and take into account as we hear and look for some of those major changes that are going to hopefully be generated from the public.
One last word, right? I wanted to assure and back him up on his point saying that, he's saying that the library board fiscally supports what we.
Oh,
do
yes.
here. And in
Yes.
fact, the current fiscal year 21 budget has pretty good funding in it. Our resources have been approached for this before.
Yeah.
And the fiscal year 22 budget does as well. So we're not coming at it from a scarcity mindset, like we need to get,
Okay, that's
the
great.
cheapest
Right.
thing. Like
And
whatever tools we need, I think we can make it happen.
And that's in part because this is a fundamental asset of the
Yes.
library.
And nothing,
Yes.
nothing on this
Nothing
board that
clicks.
more than code up, basically.
Yeah,
It was
and
like-
so all my detailed, I've not been trying to turn this into a work session today. And I have more detailed stuff if you want me to liaise or whatever to a work session. But the reason I'm taking everyone's time with some of these comments is because I feel that the asset is such an important one that we want to get the best result. So
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna
And
do
well, I
that for every
hope,
single thing on the technology plan.
I think you're absolutely right. And I hope that, you'll send those on, but also we're gonna set up some meetings so that we can maybe flesh out some different aspects and that'll give time, if they're available, but at least it'll give us time as a committee
Okay.
to kind of talk about some of those things and see where they go. Because that is the next item on the agenda, which is updating the technology plan. And Mike, I want to shift your focus on this part because as you spent time looking at other websites, design wise and looking at all the features, I looked repeatedly at libraries that I've either used or were part of my childhood experiences or school libraries, whatever, to look for the 5-year plan or the 3-year plan or our technology plan, and ours is massive. Some had 2 bullets and information underneath. And so, yes, and I would just, it's like, how many mission statements can we come up with? But if we could do what Mike did so beautifully, I think, with the personnel, public, private, and the personnel, if we could look at what are operational features for a functioning technology department versus our goals and our agenda. And we could get it down to, it seems to me we're trying to cover every base and we're not the managers of technology. The board is setting the goals that guide everything that we do in the library, the public, making sure that everything is current, is accessible, is usable. And so there's so much by the time we went through, this is just me. By the time we got to the next phase, some of the items in there that they hadn't gotten to were already obsolete. So we can't anticipate everything. When I say that, let me take it back. I can't. I'm not in the library working. I'm not the tech expert. But assuming that the professionals in the working are on top of all of that. That's what technology is all about. Every day, we don't have to tell you which software, well, we don't have to be informed of the 3 software programs you're looking at. You're the library experts after you've evaluated them, and then, and then you're gonna tell us why you chose the one you chose. So we don't need to delineate every little thing. Those I thought were operational. And Mike, you're really good at dissecting those kinds of items, I think. And if we could, in addition, we'll keep our little website update for any future meetings. But if we could put some attention to actually, let's streamline the technology plan.
Yeah.
And let's go through.
I think what I'm hearing, everything that's here is still going to be carried organizationally, but because the technology staff has priorities and things that they
Right.
want to work on. But you're saying, let's think more carefully about which is sort of operational and which is sort of a
Direction.
What needs to be accomplished versus how to accomplish it.
Exactly.
And that's the
Yeah.
analogy you've been drawing to policy.
Yeah.
I would like, just like we have, my reaction is just like we have a procedures document that is operational, it's still documented and it's visible. It's just not carried at the time. So I would hope that we would carry this plan internally in an analogous way. But yes, I can certainly
Because I'm sure
kind of
that
agree that
technology tasks and their job descriptions are what, I just trust that you could, and Stella who's in the hotbed of things,
how do
we
how
could
do
come
we-
up with some
how do we
of.
consolidate this into
Mhm.
high level goals? I mean, I
Yeah.
would say, I do think there's a role for the board committee and the board itself to just say to kind of have
Yes.
those goals reflect priorities.
Mhm.
Out of this big list that we're carrying internally, which ones are sort of, the board has told us are the most important things that we need to make sure we're.
So when the technology is planning theirs, they're looking.
So I have a
to
couple
see-
little maybe housekeeping suggestions for this
Yeah.
committee, because we've been talking about it. When this technology plan came up, you folks weren't here, but there was this discussion about like, well, is this appropriate as a board level document, which it now is because it's an appendix of our strategic plan, whereas so much of it is operational, as you all were just saying. So a couple of things, like I would recommend that we bring Sarah onto the technology committee, the board technology committee. Is there any issue with that, just to maintain this communication?
I just didn't want to give her anything else more to do. Oh, man.
So,
It's all right.
yeah, I think that was an outcome maybe we were
Yeah.
expecting from this.
Mhm.
And then Wendy and I had talked briefly about this group meeting more regularly. So maybe even until we get to a place that we're happy with, maybe even on a every other month type schedule, something like that. So you could get updates on where we are on the webpage timeline and also on any other.
Yeah, so we can
projects.
keep that up. And then I think as you all are getting in place, you're going to be establishing your own kind of priorities. Stella already knows, what she's been prioritizing, I hope.
She knows my name.
And then the third thing.
You gotta have your name tag sideways like this, so no one, so you can't read it.
No one can see where
Yeah.
I am.
But we have, in-house, and you're able to, I think, to look at those documents and our big strategic plan and.
Well, I think in the past, we've always brainstormed trying to come up
What do we
with
need?
a
Right.
comprehensive list.
Yes.
I like the idea of simplifying it and maybe categorizing things under similar.
So
Yeah.
what I would suggest maybe is that we call the staff technology
Yeah.
advisory committee, which is the group that largely
Their whole
drafted
thing.
this,
Uh-huh.
this
Yeah.
document
I like,
what I would suggest
I'm
is we
sorry.
take the staff technology advisory committee, which Kayla chairs and probably has not met since you began in September, but
Mhm.
get that group together and have a first pass at extricating, coming up with 2 documents, basically, a suggested here are the things which we think the board technology committee should consider, and here are the things that we think the staff should have as a technology plan. Procedurally, here's our internally, and then, and then there might be some things on the current technology plan which don't make it onto that. There might be some things that because of the changes in the last year or so are no longer valid, but at least we would have all that stuff, could bring it back here to this group in 2 months, and then this group could review and start talking about whether or not that works. Does that sound okay?
It sounds great to me. I would, I would think that you wouldn't necessarily just take things verbatim off of one to the other.
Right.
They need to kind of
Oh,
reword it
yeah.
as
That was my thought.
as outcomes rather than
Maybe
So,
just
yeah.
sorting them more than,
Well,
we
and some
don't
of it-
just move them.
Some of them are just standard things that we
That's
do.
Exactly, that's
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
point. It's part of your professional,
Gathering and
daily-
interpreting data on public PC usage,
Yeah.
I do it every month.
of course.
Yeah.
And the end result is David's report to us on usage
And
monthly and
I think there's probably a board goal in there somewhere about using that data to make decisions about what we purchase or what we offer, or
Mhm.
physical
Mhm.
spaces or things like that. So,
Yeah. it
so
really,
what I'm suggesting is that the staff take a first crack at this,
Yeah,
and then
that's
this
great.
group be kind of a little bit more of a working committee.
push back about not having to volunteer.
So,
but this is actually, Mike, you're very good at
oh yeah, well, we
at
could
the
also
big-
spin up a working group
yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
Which we very successfully come up with
Yeah,
products.
but, and so maybe we should start with thinking about not a directive in the big sense, but let's put something together, send it out with our ideas. How would we
So what I'm proposing is
do the
that
staff
take a
technology
crack at
first?
this,
Okay.
They would kind of present it at our next meeting.
Send something
So-
in advance of your next meeting, and then make a.
Right,
make a,
okay, so-
here's what we have.
All right, let's,
Kayla, does that sound like a reasonable timeline?
Yeah, I think so. I'll check in with the committee and see. At this point, we aren't gonna be able to meet until after
Just
the new year. I don't know if we can get
That's
together
true,
next
yeah.
week, because then I'm away.
And I say every other month for this, because it's good to have a schedule, like it helps the policy committee
Yeah.
to know
Yeah.
every other month, but we can be flexible about it.
That would be 6 times a year. Is 3 times a year enough? So it would be every other month?
Potentially, I guess my thinking was every other month because of the web progress and because we've got a
Yeah,
short
yeah,
timeline
yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
So maybe
Well,
we should
so-
shoot for something in late February, March.
Okay.
If we had a meeting in 2 months,
Yeah, then we can push one.
this rework doesn't have to hit that the very next meeting. It could
No.
be 2 meetings.
Yeah.
I could at least try to schedule meeting in January. and if we
Yeah,
get-
sure.
and just to be
New year.
thinking about, because it's something that,
And this is another
requires
one
some
that-
thought.
That Stella, when this committee probably last met when you approved the current technology plan.
Yes,
with that
which
big
would have been-
summary, remember?
Which would have been like a year ago. basically.
right. And like I said, we did how many things can we come up with to flesh out this year,
Which I understand, like that has, I'm not
And it's
questioning
good
that
to
process because
follow.
it is a process that we have used forever, but
Mhm.
I understand the need to adapt it and the value.
I think it's Alexander Library, but they're
Oh, I
all
can
on their
update.
website.
Yeah, do you want to, so,
I just-
Wendy,
Oh, I'm sorry.
are you interested in hearing updates on where we are on some of those goals for now? Because Kayla's got some things prepared just to share with the committee.
For sure, and
Yeah, we can pull that up. I just had things a little bit.
oh, I'm sorry, it was down past,
Oh,
I
yeah,
stopped,
No, you're
I'm
good.
sorry.
You want to present again?
Yeah, I got so many, there's all this others.
Is it on the bottom of this PowerPoint?
Yeah, it's the same PowerPoint.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Just the very first goal was.
Oh, I see.
Like July 1st, checked off, launching Time Clock Plus, the digital employee hours and leave tracking system. And then another goal, I have evaluated the hotspot lending program, and we were looking at the service providers, and I've been able to the library's been able to purchase 10 T-Mobile hotspots. And through a program called Mobile Citizen, where we can get unlimited data. It's basically $10 a month per device, and we're hoping to roll those out next month.
So that's an expansion from what to what?
So currently we have 18 Verizon hotspots. And that is through a company called Kajit, and that has sort of a back-end management where we sort of allocate. We have a limited fund of data that we're allocating each month and each day. Yeah. And so, but as we found, I spoke with a couple of Louisa County patrons on the phone. Louisa doesn't get Verizon in a lot of spaces, but
That's my phone carrier and I can't even get it in my house, my phone.
so the T-Mobile, we're hoping to, and it won't be limited to those. We'll have basically one at each branch. I've ordered 10. So we'll be able to spread those out, but then it just works just like the current setup where you can put it on hold and pick it up, but that'll be differentiated in the catalog between the current ones are Verizon, and here's a record for the T-Mobile. So you can basically pick which carrier and check it out from there.
So we're keeping the 18 and adding
adding
basically
10
a
more,
second.
basically.
Okay.
And if, is the idea that if these are successful, we would buy more moving forward? Like if these get checked out at a higher rate or they're anecdotally we get better?
I think
And-
so. We budgeted in the equipment budget for 10, basically, and it worked out almost exactly as we budgeted. So 10 hotspots at $200 each, because it was basically $120 for the plan and $80 for the hotspot. So that's what we allocated for this fiscal year for the budget.
For next fiscal year.
So we can maybe budget the same and see kind of where we.
And the one blip in that is, because I tried the hotspot in Louisa as well. And so if somebody's tried them and they didn't work, we need to make sure when you get these new ones, that there's some notice of it. And even if it's something silly or and to get something out on the newspaper website or and the print paper, some way that people would know, or maybe a card or something as you're leaving, or just a funny campaign that have you tried,
You might be
'cause-
able even to identify who had checked them out in the past and. 'cause-
yes, and let them know that,
You know, that one patron who's spoken to.
right,
Right.
and
this is
it's,
great, because my understanding has been that this has been very well subscribed, right? I mean,
Right,
we've had more demand than supply.
right,
Although I looked at the record for the Verizon ones today, and there are 3 available. So
Okay.
from Verizon, and that I hadn't seen that in a while. They were just constantly on hold or constantly being checked out.
well,
But I think
Yeah.
this will be good to have that alternative, and I put it under completed because we've ordered them, but like I said, I hope we did the evaluation part and now we're gonna launch them.
You know, for people that are in service areas that get both, I would guess that the T-Mobile ones would be more popular because they don't have the same data restrictions. You know, so if you had a choice of these two, at the time
I'm
we got
gonna be the
Verizon
first to
ones-
try the T-Mobile.
At the time we got the Verizon ones, they didn't have an unlimited option, so this was the best. Okay, sorry.
Okay,
And then, of course, we've spent a lot of time today talking about the website redesign, and that's been in progress. And like, as you mentioned, this is a very lofty technology plan. There are a lot of things in here that I'm still trying to acquaint myself with, but one thing we have done is we are exploring desktop virtualization for the public PCs. So Userful offers a 0 client service. So in the long run, it would be more cost effective. Right now, we're replacing all-in-one PCs every 3 to 5 years. We have an order of them. We're waiting from Dell, ETA in 2 weeks. We'll see if they come on time, but those run about probably $1,000 each. And this, for this scenario, you would buy one server that would power up to 20 workstations. So that there is your receiver is attached to the back of the monitor, and you can configure them however you want. They can be adult, child, teen, and catalog, email express, and they would essentially replace about 4 or 5 different products that we're piecemeal together. So we've got EnvisionWare for the time and management and printing, and all the things that lock it down. like deep freeze and Fortress. So, and I've talked with Camille Thompson, branch manager, about doing a trial of this setup at Gordon Avenue. So that's something that we're kind of exploring now to maybe test that out. And then, because what's nice about this is you can like buy one and then sort of roll it out as needed. It's not like you have a annual license, you have to get them all at once. You can sort of start here, see how that goes, roll out
And then
elsewhere.
we'll-
So ultimately, we sort of one server per branch, or maybe two at a large.
Right.
branch.
Depending on the size.
Yeah, probably 2 at Northside, 2 at Central.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so that would be, that's definitely one thing we're exploring. And then the technology systems for hybrid physical digital meetings, I had a quote in and we've paid a quote through Spectrum for their video teleconference system to be installed here. And it's more like a permanent setup of what we're using right now, something that
Oh.
lives here, mounted, and so we're working with them to get that installed and sort of see how that goes and being able to adapt it to other, it's considered like a mid-sized room setup for this app. So we're gonna see about adapting it elsewhere. And then for the last one there, assessing curbside technology needs, we were sort of knocking off a couple goals at one time earlier than we expected. So we have American Rescue Plan Act funds from that are being not funneled, but through the Library of Virginia, and we've put together a request for proposal for contactless lockers. And the goal with these is to shift staff away from the dwindling curbside and back into in-person library work while still offering that contactless experience. So basically, a patron ideally would be able to put a hold on an item and have it be picked up at the Louisiana locker. And then they could come, at 8 o'clock at night when the library is not open, and then pick it up, like scan their card or swipe their card and pick up the item and have it be a bit more flexible with their schedule.
This would have been great for the COVID testing.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, that RFP, I don't know if it's posted yet. I was finalizing with our Charlottesville buyer, and the goal was to have that RFP period end on about January 14th, and then we have a proposal analysis group together that will evaluate those and move forward. And then just the last little bit was, some of these goals are things that in my skill set I don't necessarily have the skills or knowledge with. So these are some things that I would like to kind of task our IT supervisor within that are from this technology plan that I think they can hopefully help us with. So the desktop virtualization of staff PCs, deploying laptops, Active Directory, updating the security manual, and cybersecurity training, and then the email express stations seems to be another goal for all the branches.
And that, yeah,
So these are all.
that
types
does
of
cover,
things- These are all the types of things that we probably would want to pull out of the current plan and make sure that they're either in an operational staff, here are our internal goals for this year or next year. Or that there's some sort of broader, if the board or the technology committee has a broader plan in mind, that fit in with those, as Mike said, like
Well,
these flow from those.
yeah, so an example here might be ensure that a governance level, we might say ensure that that cybersecurity is
Right.
accomplished or maintained.
Yeah,
Exactly.
provide, the
Yeah.
capacity for hybrid meetings for the public.
Yeah.
right, exactly. Then we don't have to go. Well, that,
You're just so much.
yeah,
I had a lot to work with here too. With all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
you've definitely had a lot to work with.
I've like scratched it up a lot with thoughts and questions. So.
I just try to scratch it out.
The thing is, I was like,
So
what can I check off? We're like
I know.
TCP.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a perfect example of something that we wanted to get in there because we knew we needed to do it, but really have like the board.
Yeah.
They could care less, they're interested in like our operational
Yeah.
efficiency, but that was just a tool that we needed administratively.
To get it.
And you
Or any
always
paper.
Get it
put some
done.
things that are already in the works so you can say you did them.
Don't give them all the secret.
Hey, hey. And is there anything you need from us or
April,
anybody?
I'm excited to get the technology advisory committee together and sort of bring this to them and figure out how we can best synthesize this for moving forward.
And shall we aim towards coming up with a February? Is that what the date you say, the month? What, I'm so confused. This
So
is
from-
December.
For me and
What
probably
about
David
you?
as well, the policy committee right now is on December, February.
Right.
So if we could get off schedule for that, so if January is too soon, then March might make sense to me.
Do you
Okay.
wanna try and tie it to the board meeting? If this could go longer, you know, we could
Right.
do it like this, where it's,
I can go either way.
Wendy, do you have a preference to that?
In some ways,
And-
that constraint is double-edged sword. It can be good to make you.
Yeah, you gotta focus.
Yeah, I'm just, March, I think I'm just thinking about travel. I'm sure I'll be able to see by then, yeah, but, I think we don't need to tie them. Maybe that would make it easier
Yeah,
for some people to come as well. Even,
that's true.
you know,
Yeah, if some,
Because you're coming in.
well, for you.
Yeah.
for-
Yeah, I-
You don't have to travel twice. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm good. I think it's
We could
good
do
to
a half an
do
hour
personal.
earlier too. I thought about that for the policy
Do
committee.
90 minutes.
We don't always don't have to pick a date today. I just.
Right, I just wanna know that we're gonna that we're agreeing, I'm agreeing with Kayla, and let's just get a month, and then we'll touch base and
Should we
say,
tentatively say
Um,
before the March board meeting and then you and I can.
Yeah, does that work?
Yeah.
Yes, let's do that.
So staff.
Maybe it's 75 minutes or something.
And if we did it in the morning, then David could bring coffee and donuts.
We can do all
But
this.
you'd be here all day.
Yeah. Go to-
Oh, and lunch?
No, if it was on, yeah, if it was on a board day, we could have pizza for lunch. and then we-
Okay. Oh, okay, then we'll just do a whole library day. Okay, are there any more questions or concerns before we?
No, I wanted to reiterate how thrilled JMRL is to
Mhm.
have Sarah and Kayla on board, and I want to thank the technology committee for pushing this to get us back onto, we talked about this last spring, but to try and make this more of a. So, looking forward to all this.
Great,
Yes, glad to have you.
lot to do.
Yes,
Shall
I
we-
know.
Shall we adjourn?
Yeah. And,
We're adjourned.
yep, we're
Yeah.
adjourned.
Adjourn?
Yeah, we're adjourned. I'll send you some other. You want the other one?
Oh, well, I like